Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. Presented by Rogue Matter, we talk comics, movies, TV, and pop culture with the rogues who create it every Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook.com/Rogue Matter Podcasts. Download this immediately following the live stream on all major podcasting apps. Go to roguewavepodcast.com. That's wave without an E to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, but we're also on Spotify, Spreaker, Stitcher, Anchor, anywhere you can get podcasts. We are on it. Join the movement. Go Rogue, roguematter.com. Tonight, we're talking WandaVision. We are talking World of Wakanda. We're talking Heroes Reborn, and I am doing it with my co-host, Mr. Lord of the Radio himself, Hassan Godwin. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Another fantastical Wednesday night.
Post-Blizzard, right?
Fun fill. Hey, I'm...
Post-East Coast Blizzard.
I'm exempt from the rigors of Blizzardness,
Do you know I've never lived in an apartment? Ever. I've always lived in a house. I've lived in a room within a house in college that you could theoretically say was an apartment, but it's still a shared living space in terms of, I guess you could call that an apartment, maybe, but that's the closest I've come. I've always lived in a house of some kind. And this was the past 2 days, as I've shoveled for 3 days straight, I also shoveled this morning, is one of the times where I'm like, wow, I wish I lived in an apartment.
It's got its upside.
Yeah.
These are the times that it's more positive than negative, but
I want to throw this out to you also before we get going. Lord of the Airwaves?
No.
Okay.
LOTR.
Oh, I see. I see what you wanted to do there. Lord of the. All right, I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna dig deep. I'll get you next week.
We'll see. We'll see.
We're hoping to have a special guest tonight too, so hopefully he will be able to join us a little later in the show. But if not, there's plenty of stuff to talk about. Let's dive right into WandaVision, episode 4. This one was a break. We interrupt your regularly scheduled program, aptly titled. I like all the titles of WandaVision so far, right? Like it's very, like it's got its whole branding motif down pat, and the titles of the episodes, with the previous ones, kind of mimicking past sitcoms, and then this one, obviously, we interrupt your regularly scheduled program, which I thought was great. Gives us a little insight into Monica Rambeau's character. Gives us an outside looking in point of view on what has happened thus far. I also kind of dig when folks who don't know the comics are still kind of like massively confused, and they're like, "Oh, it was Wanda the whole time." Spoilers. We'll get there eventually. Look, it's been a week since the episode aired.
Anyway, the one or two of the tweets that I saw, which were kind of impressive, all things considered. Actually, a good majority of the tweets I saw were even when we find out what's going on, do we have to get away from the charmingness or the cuteness of Wanda and Vision, just living in a sitcom, and the idea that they've managed to recreate that like complete age of innocence,
right.
That the propagandish kind of age of innocence, where married couples sleep in separate beds and all that kind of stuff. The fact that they were able to not only to recreate that, display that in a ridiculously contemporary world, like an overwrought contemporary world moralistically, and even in our fantasy, and resonate so well that people are not only watching week after week without knowing exactly what's going on,
right,
but also when they find out what's going on, they're almost subconsciously a little disappointed that we didn't get the level of saccharine, sitcom, extravaganza that we got for the previous 3 weeks.
Yeah,
that's impressive. That's again another thing that the MCU did that's just, it's kind of mind-boggling. Like they could just dip into all genre and kind of, just maintain the goodwill of the public while they're
Right.
doing it. Because I think, they were going to start, they pretty much, in theory, we're going to start safe with an action series like the Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right?
Yeah.
And then this WandaVision was going to be a follow-up, but,
Right.
because of, 2020 being frickin' 2020,
Right.
things changed. So now they're going to start with WandaVision. To our credit, to the credit of the audience, for most people I know, and to ourselves who reported this weeks and weeks and weeks ago, we weren't exactly skeptical,
Right.
of like, it's like we did give it the goodwill that it deserves. Like, well, if they're going to start with that, or if they if they think that this is a good idea for a series, we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt. We're just going to see what it's about. Like, instead of like when Solo happened for Lucasfilm, people were like, well, nobody even asked for this. I mean, now clearly no one has asked for WandaVision.
Right.
No one. None of the layman, casual fans and the uninitiated, the comic book uninitiated said, what we need? We need a sitcom with 2 Avengers in it.
Right.
No one said that, so obviously the whole nobody asked for this, they gave us something that nobody asked for, is not a factor. It's not a genuine metric in whether something is well received or not. So but they give us this, and we're all like, all right, we'll check it out. And the first few episodes, nothing really happens.
Yeah.
I mean, the mystery box it does mystery box pretty hard, but it mystery boxes in a manner where
you kind of know you're going to get
kinda,
some sort of answers.
Well, not even the answers. The problem with a mystery box is that the entertainment that comes with the mystery box is usually so shallow,
right,
that the only thing you notice is that we're not being told anything.
Right.
But the entertainment in this particular situation was at least characterized enough. Was I don't know, whatever adjective you want to use, effervescent enough that you remained interested.
Right.
And so when they reveal things at episode 4, my actual reaction was, wow, they're doing this really soon, and that's like antithetical to almost everything I've ever said about like about getting to the bottom of a mystery. The fact that when you start,
they did it just right,
answers,
actually.
Well, I don't know. We'll see. It's not over yet, so I'm never gonna say like, hey, this is going to be perfect. I do lean that way. But I'm not going to say it until it's over. But the whole fact that I'm getting it, me personally, taking you out of it, taking everybody else out of it, just speaking for me myself, the whole, you're out of it. You out of it, stay out of it. The whole fact that I'm receiving answers and wondering why they're giving me answers so soon is very telling. It's very significant.
Part of it goes to what you were saying in general when we talked about Mandalorian on Disney Plus and how it understands the format that it is actually executing here. It is executing a week-to-week TV series. It's not executing a binge watching experience. If you're doing a binge watching experience, this episode 4, where it actually gives you the insight, might happen, 4 or 5 episodes later, right? I mean, it might be, even though it's still 8 episodes, right? It might drop that bomb by episode 6 or 7 versus episode 4, which is what this one does. Now, obviously, like you said, we haven't seen the rest of the episodes, so we don't know. Maybe this was the only spot they could put this in. Maybe this is the only spot that would make sense. We don't know.
We don't know what this week's going to be like.
But that being said, we can definitely speculate that Marvel understands what it is they are actually bringing us, as opposed to a binge watching experience to a week-to-week experience. So that in and of itself makes sense.
I think they look at it from a practical level also. I think they're like, there's only so much time they're going to allow us to string them along before they revolt against us, And a lot of franchises, a lot of shows just don't understand this. They're like, we got them, we get, they'll watch, they'll hold on to it. And it's like, you want to maintain as much goodwill as possible. You want to give people a reason to keep watching. You want to give them a reason to keep reading. You want to keep you want to give them something. So you don't want to put your head up your backside,
right,
with too much gobbledygook science and explanations of things. You want to have an even balance. Now, the problem is that's just not easy to do, even when you're aware of it. But I mean, there are people who seem to revel in stringing people along to such an extent that they actually break the will of the audience that's watching, and then they bail. Also, the way shows come and go in our lives today, like who's gonna lock in for a series?
That's an interesting notion you just brought up, because that's something I've been thinking of also, right? And we'll talk a little bit later when we spin the racks on the new Marvel series Heroes Reborn. They released some covers, and I remember a day in comics, just to kind of dance between the comics and the comic book series that are streaming right now. When events would come out and you would be like, wow, this is the event. Like, oh my gosh. And part of it might be because I was 14 or 12 or, and things seemed greater back then. But to be honest with you, when we used to work at Wizard, I felt like event television and event comics were still a thing. I remember Identity Crisis when DC did that. And it was a big deal. When Civil War came out in the comics, it was a big deal. It didn't feel maybe it didn't feel as innocent as when I was a teenager, but it still felt like a pretty big deal. And now I feel like, because we're just inundated with so much content. I mean, so much content. And in a way, that's great, because we're sitting at home doing nothing. So thank God we're inundated with so much content. But in a higher level sense, it makes the quote unquote event not as exciting to me as it has felt in the past. So when Marvel announces a new crossover, I'm like, another crossover? Oh God. When Marvel announces another Disney show, a Disney Plus streaming show, it's like, all right, another one. Okay. And not necessarily another Disney Plus, but it's like, wow, how much can they keep mining this stuff to the point where people are actually going to be interested in it? Then I watch something like WandaVision and I get excited again, because it feels to me like it does the comics better than the comics do these days. Case in point.
Well, it's just a quality show. I mean, I don't know if there's a formula to it, and there's work that's being done. But
science. That's a formula I used to experience, and I don't experience in a lot of TV and a lot of comics.
Because there's a lot of stuff out there that's not quality.
And anymore. That's the difference. And that's when you all of a sudden, when I'm watching this show, and they're giving us the blip, they're giving us insight into the blip, like, hey, like meanwhile, while Wakanda is coming through the portal, or Spider-Man's coming back to life, you have people being resurrected in hospitals that had no idea they'd been gone for 5 years. Do you know what I mean?
Which kind of again explains why they did the 5 year.
Whether or not it explains 5 years. Gives it justification, right? Because I don't know how far.
And I told you they would. I said that they're going to milk that story. But there's a reason they've done it that way.
Yes. Well, again, we don't know if it was like, wow, we're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z with it, but it does.
Obviously, they're not going to leave it alone. They're not going to just walk away from it.
Again, and I think that we're kind of saying the same things, but in a different way. That's what makes a show like this remind me of the comics, because you'd have a writer on a particular comic book series, and that comic book series would they would make decisions, right? And you kind of sit there, and I'll use Grant Morrison as an example of this, right? You would kind of sit there, and when let's go even further back, right? Let's go back to when Liefeld and Lee and Will Spartacio left the X-Men books. The new writers kind of came on, and they had all of this story that had been built up, and were able to kind of take it and then kind of run with it, right? So now you had Fabian Nicieza on X-Men, and you had Scott Lobdell on Uncanny, and you had all these writers kind of be like, okay, all these seeds were planted. These writers, obviously they're not here anymore, so we've got to take the reins and kind of do something with it. And there was enough built up, and it was so well done prior that they were able to kind of take stuff and work with it. Then you had the Chuck Austins kind of come in and just kind of rehash the same thing over and over again. Like, how many Magneto storylines are we going to get? But then you also have people like Grant Morrison come in and take things that were put there and tell it in a way that's like, oh, wow, I didn't see that coming. And oh, a Magneto storyline that I never saw coming, with the Zorn thing where it was like Magneto in disguise. Great. Never seen that before. That was something new and unique. That was something different. And I feel like
you're saying creativity. You're saying variety,
that
creativity, uniqueness. People have vision. People have
right.
The
Blip could have. The Blip
just understand stories and know how to tell interesting intermixes. Yeah, I mean, obviously,
the Blip annoyed me when they said that when they did the 5-year thing, because I sat there going, well, it didn't. I didn't enjoy the movie experience as much as I was hoping to, because of the decisions they made. I never said it was poorly executed. I just never enjoyed it, right? And for me, Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, you were like, I don't see why they did that. That was your saying. That was your take on it. I don't see why they did that.
Right.
And then my take on it was that I'm sure they're going to dramatize it. I'm sure there's a reason they've done it that way. Because they're going to dramatize it.
I always thought they had a reason for it, too. I just didn't agree with it. I think there was...
But you didn't know it. How do you not agree with it?
I didn't agree within the confines of that 4-hour movie that I had to go to the bathroom twice at.
Yeah, but I don't understand. Like, I can understand not liking it.
Right, I didn't like it.
Don't... Well, okay, that's different from disagreeing with it.
Well, I disagreed with the choice, and I didn't like it. I said, "Boy, I wouldn't have done that. I wouldn't have done that in the confines of the movie." Now, that being said, though,
what would the impact have been about like something that significant? That's what I'm saying. Like, there's something that significant.
Yeah.
If they blip them back in a year later, then no one's lost anything. Then there's no drama. There's just this big weird thing happen. It's like the death of Superman. If you don't have the reign of the Superman kind of circumstance that happens in the middle where everybody's like, there's imposters and there's people, misusing the mantle of Superman. If you don't have any of that stuff happen, then the return of Superman has no impact. If you have like 10 issues of Lois Lane sitting in a room crying and trying to get stories out, and then the Justice League, just basically barely handling one or two, whatever their crises are, but they managed to do it. But then one or two people says, man, this would have been easier if Superman was around. But that's about the only impact that there was. Then it would have been like, well, why'd you do this in the first place?
I don't disagree with your point, but then they instituted time travel within the confines of that storyline. And I'm sitting there saying, well, if you're going to do time travel, then you might as well just bring it all back. Like it didn't make it again. Still to this day, I have questions about.
They couldn't bring him back because he couldn't lose his daughter. Tony Stark's daughter was important.
Right. So. And that also, see, they're right there.
Also, they explain away the fact that if you can't just go back and do it because it's not the same timeline. You're technically not solving your problem. You're just creating an entirely new universe.
That's another big fault I had with Avengers Endgame is they didn't actually beat Thanos. They never actually win.
They actually beat him twice.
They lose a version of him.
Yeah, but but the whole idea is that they lost. If they went back and erased their loss, then they would never have to psychologically deal with the fact that they lost.
I agree.
Now, what was the buildup for 10 years? The buildup was that Tony Stark was like, we're going to lose. That's why I'm building Ultron. That's why the Accords. We're doing the Accords. That's why we had a civil war.
I'm going to use
because I'm terrified.
Analogy. I'm going to use a basketball analogy because I know sports not good, but
I know sports. Just use your
few years ago. Sorry, I'm going to use an NBA analogy, not a basketball analogy, not the sport.
You didn't even get the sport right.
And no. Well, see, that just showed NBA is basketball, but I'm saying I'm not.
Yeah, but I
mean, analogy of basketball. I'm using an NBA analogy specifically. A few years ago, Toronto Raptors make it to the finals against arguably the greatest dynasty we've seen in the last 20 years since the Chicago Bulls, and arguably the greatest dynasty. You could argue the Golden State Warriors were the best team ever assembled. But by the time they got there, the Golden State Warriors were so injured that the Raptors won the finals. but they won against kind of a shell of the team that they were supposed to go up against. Doesn't take away their championship. It doesn't take away the
You're
victory.
kind of taking away their championship by making this analogy.
But I'm saying
you're diminishing it.
You walk away kind of going, boy, yeah, they won and they got the championship, but I just wonder what it would have been like. And when they did that in Avengers Endgame by not going up against the Thanos that beat them, essentially they still lost, and that just personally always sat
ridiculous. That's ridiculous. First of all, they technically beat Thanos. He didn't have an army anymore.
Right.
He was mortally wounded, and he used the reality stone or the gauntlet in of itself to actually cause the blip and heal himself. And then he was severely maimed after that. They found him and cut his head off. Okay, so they got revenge. They beat the army. They saved, quote unquote, the Earth. Right? They lost the objective, and then they killed him. They found him on another planet and killed him in his home while he was making dinner.
A shell of himself.
Doesn't matter. That's but that's the Thanos that they killed. And then
you're actually proving my analogy for me.
No, I'm not.
That's my analogy.
No, I'm not. If you're listening, towards the end, they fought the same Thanos again. The guy with the same resources, the guy with the same
but not
virility.
The same experience.
It doesn't matter.
It absolutely matters.
What are you talking about? It doesn't need the same experience. He doesn't need the same. The only thing he didn't have was the same tool, and the fact that it had all been assembled and meant that all he had to
of gaining of all that. Yeah, no, it's not the same Thanos. Like you're saying, it's the same Thanos, but it's not. It's a Thanos. It's again as if a team went back in time and played the high school version of that team.
But the point of the story, is that when this happens to us, we'll all be together. And because of all the machinations that happen in the movies that set up, and they all lost sight of the goal. Yeah. They were not all together when they fought Thanos. So that's the point that they were trying to make. So if they were not all together, the consequences of Civil War, the consequences of Wachovia, the consequences of all that stuff were when we needed to band together, we needed to be together, we weren't together, and thus this terrible thing happened, and we lost. And we are psychologically defeated by that now. If they don't do that, or if they could just erase that,
right?
With this as a writer, if you could just turn the dial back, then why do it in the first place?
Well, and I'll quote Stan Lee for this, right? People don't actually like change; they like the illusion of change. And I think there was enough time in between Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, like actual time, that to go back and get a real resolution that sat well. This is just what I'm thinking. Now, fast forward
to quote the Rolling Stones, you don't always get what you want; you get what you need.
I agree with that too, but I'm just saying I would have walked out of that theater much more satisfied than what I did. Fast forward though to WandaVision, going through the blip, and I got to tell you, yes. Whether or not it doesn't change my opinion of Avengers Endgame. It doesn't change my like or dislike, my agree or disagree for the decisions they made in Avengers Endgame. However, a solid creative team is now, okay, here's what we can do with this. And again, whether or not it was intended or not.
Given them the drama that the circumstance requires, as opposed to fixing it by the end of the episode, like one of those 90s adventure stories where the clock gets reset at the end of an hour. Like it's a procedural. Like, okay, we solved the crime, and next week, regardless of everything that happened to us, regardless of the fact that our lead was shot in the arm this week, next week he's going to be back on duty.
I think you still could have beaten the real Thanos. And they did beat the real Thanos and had suffered the loss.
Your assessment of whether he was real or not is your assessment of it.
The
But they
shell
did
of
defeat the real.
the unprepared Thanos who had
No, he wasn't unprepared. I don't understand. If he had his entire, if he was at strength and he had his entire army with him, then how is he unprepared?
What do you
know, like that's what I'm saying. How he's actually more dangerous. They had
the level of experience of battling him once. He did not have the experience of battling them.
They had the level of experience of battling him once, and they were psychologically defeated from having lost the battle. And look at what happened to them. Look what happened to Thor.
Right.
Look what happened to Iron Man. Like all that stuff would have been, all that good drama and that tension would have been erased.
Yeah.
If they just went back and just snapped their fingers and fixed it.
One quick sidebar. Another
I guess we're
Age
done
of Ultron Easter egg that we didn't talk about was the lifting of the hammer with Captain America. I thought that was pretty neat. Now that I remember that Age of Ultron was where we first kind of thought, can Cap actually pick up that hammer?
Like I said, it still doesn't make that shit movie good.
So. Bing. There were great things in Avengers Endgame. There were great scenes. There were great moments. Again, I'm not here to talk about that. I'm here to talk about why WandaVision, to me, makes me excited as if I was reading the comics again. Is taking a storyline, and even in this case, it's actually even greater to do this, right? Taking a storyline that I didn't agree with and that I didn't like, and now adding drama to it and making it more palatable and making it something more interesting. That to me is a testament.
Well, it just means that you don't really have Vision. That's all.
Well, we have a Vision, but he's spoiler.
No, you don't have Vision. We have Vision, but you don't have Vision. Gotcha. Understood.
Saying that I don't understand that they did it 5 years from now, and they weren't saying I don't understand why they did 5 years.
I'm just playing the Dolce game
knowing they're
and
going
jumping,
to do something with
jumping
the 5
to shit
years.
conclusions. That's what I'm doing. I'm just doing the Dolce.
I know, but I'm just saying that knowing whether or not agreeing with something and is different than knowing. Obviously, they're going to do something with it. It's not a question of whether they're not going to do.
Yeah, but I mean, your inability to see the infinite possibilities of what they could do with it. You know, that's
not a question of not being able to see. I mean, I could see a million things you can do. As a writer, I could take over. I could take a storyline and say, here's your world of story.
Well, that's all I'm saying.
5 years have gone by. Do something with it. Doesn't mean doesn't mean that whatever they do with it's going to be any better than what the initial premise of the 5 year.
But I mean, that doesn't. I mean,
in this case, it was WandaVision took it and said that's kind of.
There is never a guarantee, though. You know.
I know.
So I mean, no one's saying that anything is going to be definitive, but I mean, not being able to see why something was done in the first place, that's that lends to I don't know lack of creative vision, that kind of thing. I don't know.
There's a lot of going on over there. So let me ask you a question.
I didn't.
Tying together in this episode, tying together all the mystery boxes.
I don't think they have.
Okay, not all, but you figure out who the exterminator is, who's there, you kind of. The one thing that they don't tie in is I guess she's Agnes in the show, but Agatha Harkness is who we assume that's going to be, who kind of knows something that the rest of the rest of the players don't, or it seems to be going along with the rest, the world that Wanda has created. You know what I'm saying? Like when she has that scene with the neighbor and she's kind of like talking about Geraldine and how Geraldine doesn't quite fit in. And I'm wondering, do you think that she's actually in on what's happening, or do you think that in the confines of what Wanda has created, she is merely playing her role?
I don't think it would be interesting if she didn't know.
Yeah. I think she's. I actually think if you're talking,
I don't think there's a reason for her character to be there if she's just another pawn in the illusion or delusion.
And this is where the Mephisto storyline comes into play. Who's her husband exactly? And she keeps talking about the devil's in the details.
I never said that Mephisto wasn't going to happen.
Well, we don't know.
But
all right. I'm just speculating. That's all. I'm just doing some good old fashioned speculating.
Yeah, that's not really speculation.
Wait,
you haven't speculated. You're suggesting. Go through the whole. Commit to to whether or not you think that's actually what's going to happen or not. You know,
All
you're
right,
just
I
like,
will go.
what about that? You
Let's
know,
do it.
who knows? That's not really speculation. That's just fishing.
Let's do. What do you mean that? Oh my God.
If you speculate something, right, you're making a decision based on what you believe may or may not happen. You're staking it. You're making a stake for it. If you just suggest this could happen, but I don't know, that's not. That's fishing. That's a suggestion. That's not a speculation.
All right. I guess.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean.
You've had some quality arguments that you always lose in our history of doing this.
I have not lost one argument that we've ever had. Name one.
Sure, Hassan.
Name one.
Sure.
Double J.
This last one is a little. This is a little thin.
Didn't think you could. I'm saying you're not committing to the full speculation. You're just fishing.
I am speculating.
I could do that too. You know what I think? I think C-3PO is behind it.
Well,
there's possibilities. There's possibility.
Great segue, because what was
that's not a speculation.
What was trending on Twitter last night was Elizabeth Olsen is suggesting that there is going to be a surprise cameo, and it's going to be the same level of a Luke Skywalker.
Okay.
Who would you speculate is that surprise cameo? I got to tell you, people were talking about Luke Skywalker being there. No, that's not going to happen. Pietro.
It wouldn't be the same level.
Pietro coming back. Stan Lee coming back in a surprise cameo.
No.
Like if we were to give odds.
In poor taste. That's in very poor taste.
Well, they said that there was a rumor that he had recorded a whole bunch of cameos for future movies, just in case. And if
it was genuinely him and he had recorded it prior to whatever, and they weren't just Carrie Fishering him into the situation.
Yes, right. No, legit. Like he recorded these so he could be in future movies. That's
I still
a rumor.
Think that's in poor taste.
But what if he?
That's not something you tease, though. That's something that you just leave it there, and you're like,
okay. I got you. Yes. Okay, I agree with that. I don't know. Is it in poor taste? Like if at Stanley's will reading,
I think it's in poor taste.
I want to appear in 20 movies, and I'm really excited. Or I want to appear in 20 more Marvel things. I'm really excited about all this. Put me in, and you're honoring his wishes. It's not necessarily in poor taste.
I think resurrecting a guy and saying it's at the same level as reinstating a childhood hero,
Yeah,
it's in poor taste. That's a real life. That he's not playing a character. He's Stan Lee. He's a real life guy.
Yeah.
I thought the Carrie Fisher thing was in poor taste.
Did you?
Yeah, I thought it was well done. I'm actually one of the few people said, halfway through that terrible movie, I was like, oh yeah, you know what? She's not in any of this movie at all.
Yeah.
Right. But I still think it was in poor taste.
Yeah.
Especially when you had an easy out of her being sucked into space. Movie.
Well, I mean,
but that's fine. That's just that again, lack of vision right there.
Yes.
But if it's on the caliber of a Luke Skywalker, it's got to be a character. It's got to be a crowd favorite character.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily. I mean, maybe Iron Man. Iron Man would be
who
at
I
the
think
level.
It is? I'm gonna go full. This is not speculation. I'm gonna put my money down. I'm gonna go to Vegas and put money on this. Black Widow.
Okay.
Because she's dead. So maybe somehow she
is she at the same Luke Skywalker caliber as Black Widow, at that same level? But that's of course only using.
That's Elizabeth Olsen's terminology, though, right?
Yeah,
I mean, maybe to her that would be
it.
Right. Maybe that would be to her. I don't know. I mean,
Iron Man. Speculation is crap.
I guess Iron Man could be it too, because he's also quote unquote dead. Spoiler for me.
But I mean, he just died, so that's not even of the same caliber, because we haven't even had the opportunity to miss him, really.
Yeah. But I feel like I'm going to take.
I mean, her brother there's a very good possibility it's her brother, but her brother is not at the caliber of Luke Skywalker. That's for sure.
Not even close. And quite frankly, when we start merging with the X-Men, Quicksilver in the X-Men universe was like the most favorite like X-Men character of the past few movies of First Class.
Yeah,
You know,
but since
to the
they,
point
you
where
know, since
they're
they own
going to
that
want to
now,
suck him in into
since
this
they
universe.
own that now, and they have the multiverse, they could actually use him. That
Yeah.
would be interesting.
So
it would be weirdly meta, but it could be interesting.
Yeah, it'd be very fascinating for that. So,
But you know, I don't know. I don't want to. When is this supposed to happen? At the end of the season?
Yeah, some sort of big cliffhanger.
Well, who major in the series has died other than Tony Stark and Black Widow? It'd have to be someone who's gone, or someone who was involved. Maybe Red
What if
Skull?
it's a Steve Rogers thing, right? What if it's not someone who's gone? What if it is like literally Chris Evans? Now we had reported that Chris Evans was going to make more appearances.
Yeah, but I mean that's not a
Tony Stark.
That could work, but I don't think that would be all that astonishing.
Yeah. It's Batman.
Luke Skywalker,
it's Batman.
Yeah.
It's Michael Keaton Batman.
You've just given up now, isn't it? That's you just throwing in the bag right there. Yeah. Okay.
That's it.
All right.
It's clearly the devil's in the details. Jack Nicholson.
Yes, it is.
Have you ever danced to the devil in the pale moonlight? What do you guys think?
Yes,
Who's
clearly
the surprise cameo of a Luke Skywalker-esque? Maybe it's Lou Ferrigno. No, he's still alive. Who is the surprise cameo? What did you guys think in terms of revisiting the blip? And what do you guys think is going to come ahead? Please comment in the Facebook feed, facebook.com/Rogue.
I think it's going to be Ronan. It's going to be Ronan the Accuser. Because everybody's been looking for that.
It's going to be the Punisher from Marvel Netflix. It's going to be.
Yeah, it'll be Barenthal.
All day long. All right, when we come back, our Rogue Rage. We've got some news coming out of Wakanda to discuss when we come back.
Way to give that away.
Welcome to Button Stash, the show about the best mustaches in gaming.
Casey, it's Button Smash. It's the new gaming podcast from the Rogue Matter Network. I don't know where you got mustaches from.
Well, I'm not shaving. But we will talk about gaming news, reviews, inside scoops, and retrospectives.
Join us live on twitch.tv/WeAreRogueMatter on Thursday nights, 9 p.m. Eastern, or download our episodes wherever you listen to your podcast.
But please, Casey, shave.
Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast, the frequency for all things pop culture and the disruptors behind it. I want to cue you guys in the Sire Volume 3 Kickstarter. We are doing quite well. We are at or nearly at our goal, which means stretch goals could be coming, but help put us over the top. Sire Volume 3 Rebirth, Mo Powers, Mo Problems, Level Up or Get Left Behind. The Sire comes back from his interstellar travel in Volume 2, only to find that the villains that he kind of left behind here have leveled up in his absence and are teaming up to take him down. It's 90s superhero action. And check out this quote. This is an unsolicited quote, unbiased quote. Michael Dolce is a wonderful human being and everyone should buy the Sire. It's from my mom.
Wow.
My mom's not wrong.
Wow. Yeah. She's hard to get a comment from, too.
Very difficult.
Yeah.
Very difficult to get.
So you gotta take everything she says with absolute certainty.
Go to SireStudiosInc.com/Kickstarter. It'll forward you right to the Kickstarter page, or you can look up The Sire, THESIRE, Volume 3 on Kickstarter, and it should take you there. Great reward packages. Mog Park did an amazing Ladies Who Lunch cover, and we're offering an exclusive black and white variant, a limited offer. There's only, I think, 3 left. So go ahead and check it out on the website. All right. We were talking WandaVision. We're going to shift gears a little bit. We do this every week.
Now we're going to do WakandaVision.
Yeah. Ooh. Look at you go. The Rogue Rage, all the rage in the pop culture world. Black Panther director Ryan Coogler is working on several shows for Marvel Studios under his new deal with Disney. On Monday, it was announced that Black Panther director Ryan Coogler will expand the Kingdom of Wakanda with a Disney Plus series. This all comes as Coogler signed a 5-year deal with Disney TV under his Proximity Media banner. The press release also teases the Wakanda series will not be the only thing Coogler will develop for Disney Plus, and it will kind of take place before Black Panther 2, or at least will be released before Black Panther 2, which is not set to be released for a few years from now. Obviously, we've talked about in previous episodes the rock and a hard place that the Black Panther franchise is in due to the death of Chadwick Boseman, and so the much speculation as to what this means. Now,
I'm sure the series will explain the absence of T'Challa.
Well, that's the question, right? Or will it replace Black Panther 2? I mean, I know it's still on the docket to be done.
I don't think they're not gonna look what they're gonna do theoretically, right? The wise thing to do, if you ask a layman what the wise thing to do, get everybody used to whatever the replacement for him is going to be in the show.
Yeah.
Do a show to the level of critical acclaim. Then you can get that audience back that from the first installment, you get that audience back for the second one. Wondering exactly how you're going to explain it, and then also trying to explain away the absence of a tremendous character in 2 hours while also trying to entertain. Be easier to do a TV show to let that happen.
Yeah, I think it makes more sense to do it. But I wonder if, not that they can monitor the response to it, but I wonder if the execution of the series is going to determine whether or not they actually go through with the second movie. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it will obviously
$1 billion. It's a culturally significant $1 billion movie. It was a success on every level that you could of metric that you can have. It was a culturally forward-thinking movie. It was a hit movie.
Yeah.
It was a financial juggernaut.
It was unbelievable, right?
There's no way they're not going to do a sequel. There's no way.
I think it's one of those things though where it's has become so tied into the actor who played the role that it is. We talked.
So you wouldn't do it. That's what
you're
saying. If you're a businessman and you made a bunch of money off of Sire 1, and then you lost your artist who became synonymous with Sire, for whatever reason, you'd be like, I don't think I should do a second one because I made a lot of money on this one, but everybody loves that artist. You wouldn't try, business wise.
You would try from a business point of view. It's a good analogy. It's not apples to apples because I think film
apples to apples analogies don't apples and apples analogies don't make any sense because they're not convincing. They're not a convincing factor because it's the same scenario again. If you don't believe the first scenario, you're not going to believe the apples to apples comparison of the second scenario. But if you put together an analogy that allows you to think of it in a brand new context, of course it's not going to be apples to apples, but it's going to help you understand the point I'm trying to make. Doofus. Of course, because it wasn't yours. Anyway, so you wouldn't do it. I gotcha.
I'm just wondering if they're use it as a barometer to determine. I think the plan right now is to do it.
What do you think? What do you think the cultural hit would be if they didn't do it? If they just decided we're just going to cancel it? Chadwick Boseman was such an amazing person. We're just going to decide to shut this franchise, the successful franchise, down, without even attempting to do anything about it.
But it's not as if he just decided like, hey, I just don't want to be in the film anymore, right? This was a tragedy. The circumstances for this are just a little bit different to me than your run of the mill. We couldn't get this guy to resign, so we're going to recast him. And they already said they're not recasting him. But it's also, the movie isn't called like World of Wakanda. The movie is Black Panther 2. So someone does have to fill Black Panther's shoes. I know the sister has done it before. And so hopefully that's the route they go. They've done it before in the comics, I should say. but it's a little. This is delicate. This is not something.
I'm not saying
that
I'm not saying whatever they're going to do is not going to be either. It's not going to be fraught with peril and seriously risky. I'm just saying there's no way they're not going to try.
I guess so. We'll see. We will find out. This obviously Disney Plus, series wedged in between, though, adds a little layer of speculation. Spider-Man 3 marketing teases arrival of Ned's Hobgoblin. So since Jacob Batalon's Ned Leeds in the Marvel Cinematic Universe has always seemed like Peter Parker's faithful best friend, it seemed a little out of the realm of possibility that he might turn evil like his comic book counterpart. But a new marketing image implies that yet another villain might appear in Spider-Man 3. In the comics, Ned Leeds was actually brainwashed by the Kingpin into doing the villain's bidding, while subsequent versions of Hobgoblin were petty thieves or even ex-mercenaries. The new image comes from Spidey #1 fan _ account on Instagram, which has been used before to tease fans with details about the MCU's Spider-Man. This time, the art shows a photo of Jacob Batalon's Ned Leeds, who has been scribbled over in typical high school fashion, but the interesting detail is the orange art drawn over his head, which looks like a simple translation of the bright orange Hobgoblin hood. That was the interesting note in Spider-Man Homecoming to me, when in the comics in Ultimate Spider-Man, he's not Ned Leeds, or at least he wasn't in the original Ultimate Spider-Man universe. That was his best friend. So when they actually made that combination in the Spider-Man Homecoming movie, I'm kind of like, oh,
he looks like Genki from Miles
it is,
Morales.
Yeah, it's Genki. Yeah. I mean, it is Genki, I guess. But in this universe, they called him Ned Leeds, and Ned Leeds is like, well, that's the Hobgoblin.
Yeah, who knows what they're gonna do? I don't know. I don't know why they did it that way.
Yeah,
but that's the way they did it. So they're in again, which sucks from a journalistic perspective. But as far as I'm concerned, they've earned enough. As I said before, they've earned enough goodwill that I'm just merely curious as to how they're going to make that work. But I don't think that they're not going to be able to make it work, which sucks. Because, as a skeptic, it kind of ruins everything when you're like, nah, these guys will do it. They'll pull it off. It ruins the whole skepticism thing.
I wonder whether or not it's going to be one of those look into a multiverse situation that maybe Ned Leeds is going to get a glimpse of a future version or an alternate version of himself, or just an alternate version of who Ned Leeds is. Maybe it's not even that same actor, but just kind of, maybe it's a quick little thing. I don't know. It's a good question, and but it's one that I kind of forgot about, and then was reminded when I saw this news article of like, oh yeah, they did do that. And to your point earlier in the show, they don't seem to do anything just by happenstance here, right? I mean, there seems to always be a reason, like a legit reason for it. So, we will see. And finally, switching back to WandaVision for a second, WandaVision director reveals if the twins will be sticking around. During the 3rd episode of WandaVision, this is from Heroic Hollywood, Wanda became pregnant under magical circumstances. Then the length of her pregnancy was pretty quick, and she gave birth to twin boys during the 30-minute episode. Marvel Comics fans should recognize the twins as they grow up and become superheroes in their own right under the names Wiccan and Speed. In the comics, I it's funny, I stopped reading Young Avengers in the comics, so I didn't realize that was the twins that
I mean, they could make it work. For me personally, it'd be like, and those are the 2 kids you made with the corpse of your husband.
Spoilers. Oh, real
not
quick.
A spoiler. They showed it. They
Real
showed
quick.
him. They showed him dead. It's not a spoiler.
Sure, that's true. Actually, you're right. Real quick, but on the episode 4, I got online at around, I don't know, 10 o'clock. I was working. I had a busy work day on that Friday, right? And Friday is the day when the episodes drop. And I was going on Twitter for an actual work reason. And somebody said, like, whoa, when I saw Dead Vision show up, I'm like, oh man. I'm like, all right, now I got to watch the episode. But I was working at the same time. So I was mainly listening to it while I was watching it on my phone, while I was also doing work. So I got through the whole episode, and I was like, oh wow, that's so neat. Oh wow, and in certain points of the episode, you can kind of tell when you need to focus on like what's actually happening on screen versus kind of like what's going on. And I totally missed Dead Vision the first time around. Totally missed him because it just sounded like they were having a conversation within the confines of the universe. So then it ended, and I'm like, well, there's still 5 minutes left here. And I'm like, maybe it was a end credit scene. And I started like fast forwarding on my phone, like, where's the end credit scene? I'm like, how did I miss Dead Vision? And then I'm trying to Google Dead Vision to see like, well, what was the scene? And then I realized,
you know what? This is a
eventually.
perfect opportunity in the show for me to completely roast you about like, the dedication to the craft or whatever, but I'm not going to do any of that.
I am. I was very dedicated to finishing up that comic book project that I'm working on.
Figure out, that's what's that got to do with me? Now you're dealing with that stuff on my time. BS.
I think also the fact that I was already.
Did you finish
spoiled to
Ozark?
the fact
No.
that Dead Vision was coming back.
He still didn't finish Ozark. He's right. That's what I'm talking about.
I gotta finish that.
You
I
got
still got
no dedication.
I still got a lot to do.
In the course of the 2 weeks since you brought it up and said that this is the greatest pilot that you've ever seen, I've seen all 3 seasons.
I finished
right,
season 1.
and I watched WandaVision.
I finished season 1.
And okay, yay! You're so far behind.
I did not see a lot of that stuff coming. That was Ozark is the one show as a writer that I don't enjoy it as a writer because I don't have to. I enjoy it as a fan. Like completely as a fan to where, because I have no idea what's coming next. Like I have no idea what's coming next.
I guarantee you don't.
Jason Bateman, this morning nominated for a Golden Globe.
Good for him.
Ozark.
Deserved. Well deserved.
Yeah.
What's her name? Ruth has won what? At least
she's won the
already.
Emmys.
Yeah.
Penelope. Yeah. No, I'm very I'm very excited.
Uh-huh.
Very excited.
Yeah.
Very excited.
It'd be good to finally discuss that with you in 2022. Anyway,
when we come back,
let's move on.
We go spinning the racks. Welcome back to the Rogue Wave podcast. We like to do this segment when there's some notable comic book news that you need to know because the stuff that happens in the racks are going to end up on the small and big screen. We call this segment Spinning the Racks.
Spin the rack, spin that rack.
Heroes Reborn. And we kind of talked about this a little bit last week, but Heroes Reborn is even more so going to be here. And the question is, how long will it stick around? Marvel reveals details and covers for weekly Heroes Reborn series. Reborn #1 will welcome readers to a world where Tony Stark never built the Iron Man armor. In Reborn #2, make way for the adventures of Marvel's mightiest megastar, the all-powerful Hyperion. Reborn #3, brace yourselves for chaos magic at Mach 5. And finally in Reborn #4, Dr. Spectrum, equipped with the cosmic might of the Power Prism, has become the most feared lawman in the heavens. What's interesting, and this is from the Beat website, in all this information is that there is no indication of just how long Heroes Reborn will last, how it spins out of the Avengers ongoing series, if at all, and how long it will keep up its weekly pace. So this is kind of goes back to the original Stan Lee quote I gave you, right? The illusion of change. Heroes Reborn kind of comes back, and it just feels like it's not building on anything. It just happens to be, and then it's a mystery box.
Nobody knows what Heroes Reborn is, though. You didn't lead in with explaining exactly what you're talking about for the uninitiated.
Podcasts. A new series from Jason Aaron and Ed McGuinness debuting in May that will follow a Marvel universe in which the Avengers not only never formed, its members never became heroes, and Blade will be the only one that seems to remember that this is the case.
seems like pertinent information people would need to
Go
determine
download the
whether or not
podcast
this is
last
something.
week. Go onto our Spotify account. Click the follow button. Click the download button. Editor's note. Download last week's podcast for more information. I threw that there. Look at that. Anyway, the illusion of change versus the actual reality of anything of value or substance going on here. One floating theory is that things like Heroes Reborn are going to more closely align the MCU with what's happening in the comics. At this point, and maybe I'm a cynical, comic book reader who's been reading comics for a long, long time now. I'm okay with it. Like, I'm okay with it if you're not going to bring me new and original stories, if you're not going to be the risk-taking, company that you might have been in the 80s or 90s, and even the 2000s, especially the 2000s, then just be the licensed group of, your movie property. At this point, like, I'm not upset with that. I really wouldn't be upset with that.
I don't even understand what you're talking about. Like, so not getting new comics, not getting new
No,
ideas in comics.
No. The idea, how the Buffy series, when it was at Dark Horse, is really just the licensed property of, of Buffy. So they don't need to. They're not actually going to do anything that pushes the storyline outside of what's going to happen in the TV series. They're just going to tell more stories around what you kind of already know, so that if you like the TV show, I can pick up an issue of Buffy and not be lost. And it'll be like, oh, look, it's an issue, and there's Spike, and there's Angel, and there's Buffy, and there's all the people I know, and they're battling a monster, and this is basically just an extension of the TV series. Versus, where after the TV show, Dark Horse was like, all right, you're going to do season 8, and you're going to do season 9, which now have actually all been retroactively eliminated anyway from canon, but that's neither here nor there. If Marvel is going to continue to put out stuff, X-Men universe aside, because the X-Men universe to me is actually doing stuff that is different, finally, which is great. But if the Avengers universe is just going to put out books that are just basically, here's new Avengers and go have fun with it, let's get it as close to what the MCU is, so that people who like the MCU may or may not pick up this comic. Just do it then. Just make it that way then. Just don't go half in, or come up with something new, like Heroes Reborn. Really?
But you're talking about cannibalizing your source material, though, right?
No, I agree.
Because if your source material where you derived all the MCU from starts to now mimic the MCU, now it's eating its own tail.
Yeah, but at this point, if again, you're kind of coming out with stuff that to me just is like, really, like, okay, I guess so. I guess we're seeing maybe it goes back to the original.
I mean, that doesn't.
Maybe it goes back to the original point though we talked about with WandaVision, right? Where I guess there's just so much media clawing for our attention now that stuff like this just feels like desperate in a way. Like a Heroes Reborn series just feels desperate, or even just naming it Heroes Reborn just feels desperate to me.
Okay. All right. I
No, you're struggling with
it
this one.
Sounds like it's a bad book, Sounds like you're not impressed about the book. That's all. Doesn't necessarily. Why is that? I don't understand why it's a big deal. Like it's a lackluster book,
Well, I mean, I guess maybe that maybe that is actually the answer, right? Like maybe it's just not a big deal. Maybe Marvel is trying very hard to make it a big deal, promoting it as such. It's kind of like the DC storyline that we just kind of got as well too in January, where I don't know, these alternate takes on things to me are fun when they're used very, very sparingly, like very sparingly. Or the book is like What If, right? Like What If is a great book, right? Because it could sit there and say, here's all the stories we've never gotten to tell, or here's something cool that you could do. It's in the confines of the pitch for this series, right? You are picking up this series because you know you're not reading something in canon. You're reading something that, we're just trying to have fun with and explore without any real repercussions, good or bad, right? Like it's almost kind of like it's a safe way to do unsafe storylines, right? Whereas repackaging old crossover titles under new monikers, to me just feels, and it's part of canon and it's part of like what you're doing. I don't know, it just feels desperate to me. And it doesn't feel like, as opposed to what they're doing in the X-Men books, which is revamping everything, but doing it based off of the past and just finding something unique about the past that hasn't been told before. The island of Krakoa being something that you could easily have overlooked when it was there, when it jump started the all new X-Men with issue 94 or with the giant size X-Men book, I should say. Hickman actually took it and said like, hey, we never really explored this before. And it's like, wow, yeah, this is great. And Moira McTaggart, having this new power, whether or not it fits, snugly in the continuity, at least it's building on what has come before.
I mean, there's an argument that even that's not good, right?
No, I
now
think
it's cannibalizing its own past, or it's rewriting history in order to go. It's going backwards in order to try to go forward.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not good. I'm saying there could be the argument that could be made that it's not good. That's not good. That's not the way forward. The correct way to do things.
It feels like it, but it feels like it's actually going places it's never been, as opposed to just reinventing stuff that already is in a new.
It's literally going places that it's never been by going back to where it was and trying to make something.
There. Right, the foundations were there, but not the.
That's not going places it's never been. That's just putting a new spin on some place it's already been.
Well, all right, yes, literally, yes, they've been to Krakoa before, so yes, having it there, yes, but I'm saying it's the foundation, but then taking it in new places, like they're visiting new worlds. Apocalypse, his whole storyline is being expanded in ways that we've never seen before in the current books. The X of Swords actually was a surprisingly entertaining crossover, even though it was like 28 issues or something, ridiculous like that. But it was good. Like it was actually good because you're sitting there going like, wow, okay.
Powers of X.
What's that?
X of Swords and Power of X, right?
I think it was
X,
definitely X of Swords. Yeah, X of Swords is the Powers of 10 was the original, was the House of 10, was part of that compendium.
I thought that was House of X.
No, it's X of Swords. Well, the X of Swords crossover, I'm saying that they recently just had, was really, really good. In the sense that,
but
again, they're taking previous characters we've seen before, telling new stories with them, as opposed to taking characters we've seen before and just like using the gimmick of just repackaging them as something different.
That's literally the same thing. It's a repackage.
Right, then I'm not explaining it exactly right.
You're not. You're talking about the nuance with which the creator of this one series is doing a better job than the creator of the writer creator of the other series, which you think is doing a lesser job. But they're both trying to do the same thing. They're both trying to redress an old property by spinning an old idea in a new fashion. It's just one is more successful at it than the other.
Yeah.
In your opinion.
Yeah, I think so. Okay. I mean, look,
to what I'm saying, opinion. To what I was trying to say before, of course it's your opinion, but to what I was trying to say before, you're basically just talking about a bad book. You're not talking. I mean, the way you.
I would say a bad concept for a book. A bad concept for a book.
The way you entered the conversation is you're spinning it as if the comic books become just a holding place for the MCU, as opposed to the source material for all the MCU.
Right.
Then let's just go for it and get it over with. But basically, what you're really saying is that you don't like this book.
I don't like the concept.
And if this is the way forward,
because I haven't read it yet. It could be written really, really well.
You haven't even read it yet. Okay.
Well, because it's not out yet. I'm saying, but based off the concept of what we are experiencing. That's what I'm saying. It's not a good or bad book. It's a good or bad concept. And it's a concept we've seen.
You don't even, but the concept is the exact same as the concept of the book that you like.
No,
that's what I'm saying.
No, it's not though. This is like a new universe. It's been spun out of the old universe, and it's a mashup of all these different characters, and
which one?
Like the Heroes Reborn one. So this thing exists from. This is a new universe based off of the current universe that is somehow going to fit.
Right. It's just taking it to it's just taking the concept to the nth degree. The concept is the same. The execution is different. The nuances are different, but the concept is exactly the same.
Are much different. Yes.
So that's what I'm talking about. Like the concept doesn't need reworking because obviously you like the concept.
No, I like the concept.
Done in a different when done by different creators, you actually like the concept. You find the concept is viable. Concept of going back to go forward or altering slightly where you've been to shed a new light on but
that doesn't sound like what Heroes Reborn is, though. Heroes Reborn.
But that's exactly what you've described it as.
Heroes Reborn is taking something that is as a catchphrase, for lack of a better term, and repackaging it as something new. And I just think that's, I don't know. I'm like, I feel like they're out of ideas.
Well, what would you call going back to Krakoa? I mean, all right, never mind.
No, because it's still X-Men.
It's just it's a bias, though. You have a bias. That's the thing, because you're totally allowing for one to do the exact same thing. You just like the execution of that one more than the concept of what you assume the execution of this other thing will be, without actually having read the other thing.
Correct. I have not read this yet because it's not out yet. I don't know.
This was a time-filling segment.
No, but it's
a segment to fill time.
It's more of a therapy session. I think that's what. All right, next week we welcome
freedom of speech.
Writer
Freedom of speech.
Victoria Rao on. She is going to discuss the nuances of WandaVision, like we've never discussed before, and hopefully announce a new project with her as well too. See you guys next week.
Rogue Wave.